Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casazza here on a Wednesday morning, all goofed up on the schedule because we're not playing a football game on a Saturday night in the fall. It's a Thursday night game for West Virginia at Houston, 7 p.m. FS1. Here to preview, predict, discuss, debate. Chris Anderson. Chris, did you get the fruit basket from the University of Houston?
No, I did not.
Oh, it's lovely.
As Everybody's been very nice this week. Very nice. Too nice?
Yeah, I know some of the backstories and I just don't buy it. I know they're saying like the right things and all that stuff. And I think time changes a ton of stuff, obviously. Just some of the key um, actors, let's say, aren't in the same places anymore. So that helps. But for some people involved here, there was definitely some animosity. I don't think those people have microphones, which is good for them. Maybe not for you and me, but on the surface, yeah, everybody a fan of one another and the things they did here and are doing there. Um, but both teams really, really want to win this one and need to win this one for totally different motivations too, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking with our Houston guys, and I was like, yeah, I think this is like weirdly a must win for WVU, and almost none of it has to do with Dana, like and that connection. It's just, hey, good things are happening. And now all of a sudden there's an expectation of instead of being the underdog that was like, wow, they beat TCU, wow, they beat Texas Tech. Now there's an expectation of, hey, you're a better team than Houston. You need to win this one. This is one of the winnable games on the schedule. Do it. And obviously, and then for Houston, they're off to a 2-3 start. And if they lose this one, they're gonna have to climb back up the hill just to get to bowl eligibility. And Dana's, you know, on a little bit of a hot seat down there in Houston. So yeah, both teams with a lot of motivation Thursday night.
Yeah, it's such a strange catch 22 here because if Neil Brown goes down to Houston and wins with extra preparation against a team he's favored to beat and banks a fifth straight win, cool. You've been building toward that. You're supposed to do that. You pat him on the head, obviously. We don't pat too many times. I feel like that's what the fans would do. However, if you go on the road and lose to a team that's at home with extra time to prepare, it's a Big 12 game. I don't think these teams are wildly different. We can get into why there are some differences, obviously. But if they lose, you not only lose a game that maybe you shouldn't, but also you lost to the guy who was here before you. And that's just going to naturally inflict some of this guy, really? Lost to that guy, really? Like it's going to do some of that, which makes this kind of fascinating. Like on the surface, it's there. It doesn't have anything to do with what happens, though, or like how you evaluate things. Just because you beat someone or lose to someone and there's some sort of a connection, it doesn't really matter. But I think to people who have some sort of an investment in this game beyond the team they root for, but maybe like who they root against or times that they didn't like or departures they didn't really care for, this carries a little bit of extra meaning. But again, everybody's really happy and friendly during this whole pregame here. I mentioned this before you came on, Chris, and the schedule has me all goofed up, but I'm pretty sure that West Virginia has infrequently been a road favorite under Brown. I want to say it was at Kansas in 2021 was the last one. And then if I had this right, maybe look at my numbers here. It might have been at Kansas in 2019 as well. I don't know. It doesn't happen very often. Do you happen to know that data? Or do I have to like sneak this into a fresh set box at some point? Do we have this number on the top of our head? Because it doesn't happen very
You might
often.
have to, yeah, you might have to sneak that in. Thing. I used to be able to pull that up pretty quick, and I can't remember what site it was that I was using for that, which would pull up, a certain college team's schedule and have the spread right there. And you just gotta scroll down, you're good to go. But I don't see it and don't think I have it.
What was the
Because
line
yeah,
for
they've
Tech, Virginia Tech last year?
um yeah, so you're gonna have to give me a minute. I don't know.
That would be the one that would
I,
rival it, I think.
let's see. At Virginia Tech, West Virginia was 2-point favorite.
There it is. So maybe it's the last Big 12 game. That was Kansas. So either way, it doesn't happen too often. It's a good thing, but it's also earned. And it does make sense here too. Why, Chris? Why is West Virginia favored on the road Thursday night with the other team not traveling and having extra time to prepare for a team?
Because I think there are a ton of question marks about Houston. I think there's some matchups here for West Virginia. Um, some of it's like this good on good, like where West Virginia's good, Houston's okay, or maybe even good, but I think West Virginia is better. And then where they're both kind of weak, it just seems like more of an opening for West Virginia to be decent. It just seems like a tough matchup for Houston. Um, if it weren't for, say, home field and maybe the extra motivation of winning this game for Dana and so many people on that sideline, um, I would have picked WVU pretty handily in this one because the numbers say, hey, maybe it is WVU.
We can start offense, we can start defense. Heck, we can even start special teams because there are certainly some aspects of the third phase that matter. There are some overlaps here. I won't give a lot away, but some overlaps with these two sides, and they're obvious, but there's some that are extra too. And I was talking to one person just about the game and how offenses match up against Houston is kind of different with their defense, and how the defense matches up with the offense is obviously different, but there are some core principles that just seem like they match up in West Virginia's favor. Um, Houston very solid up front, and they want to force teams to throw because they can stop the run with those guys. And if you can gear your passing attack with extra people or with extra attention to the back and not the front, because you're confident in stopping the run, then you're okay. The problem with that is, Chris, their run defense isn't very good. In fact, it's bad. It's in the low 90s out of the 133 teams in the FBS. And then it seems to me that this person's point of view was if you can load up and you can run the ball at Houston, um, just hit a couple pass plays, throw it 12, 15 times, and then offensively just cover their receivers because they're not very good running the ball. And if you can keep that quarterback under wraps, what this person kind of said, like the quarterback doesn't get outside and make plays and then maybe throw off the thread of his feet, they're going to have a hard time getting past any type of special coverages that you might devote to their speed and their skill outside. And this person likes West Virginia by like double digits because of the matchups and the way they kind of lean toward the natural way these two teams play and match up with each other. So I guess we can begin with the obvious here, which is when West Virginia has the ball, being big, lining up, and taking on that front of Houston, which is pretty good, but as we mentioned here, is not very good against the run so far.
Yeah, I believe they're 98th in run defense and 91st in pass defense. So there's not a lot of strengths on that side of the ball. Might have flip-flopped those two, but either way, both in the 90s, out of 133 teams, like you said. So and you look for trends, like where is it going to happen? Yeah, I mean, with the running game, they've had a couple games where teams were able to run the ball and Houston won. Teams were not able to run the ball, but Houston lost. But in general, overall, they're just not a very good run defense team. And then you get to their secondary. Ooh, that's where there's a big difference between, the split stats between what's happening in wins and what's happening in losses. And I'm not saying, like you said, I think you mentioned it just a second ago, you don't have to go out and throw 50 times. Go out there and hit some of these passes 15, 20 times, and you're good. Like it's not a volume thing here. It's an efficiency thing and a big play thing because in losses, Houston has allowed teams to complete over 65% of their passes and about 9 yards per attempt with 7 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. In the wins for Houston, their defense has at least slowed things down, and those numbers are down to 56% completion, 5.7 yards per attempt, and only 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions. So it's there if you can get it and really attack that secondary, but it's not a volume thing. It's an efficiency and big play thing right there.
Big numbers by UTSA, TCU, and Texas Tech. And Houston is 1-2 in those games. Squeak by UTSA, thanks to a big catch by Michael Laughlin in that game. Third down, moved the chains, helped them get out of that game with a win, and then just could not stop the run against TCU and Texas Tech. West Virginia did not light up either one of those teams with their running game. They're still trying to get their running game on track, but if they're trying to look up things and figure out what they can do, they have a recency of having just played these two teams, and they can study what Houston did to or those teams did to Houston and how they can make it work. Is there some carryover there? I don't know. Be interested to watch the quarterbacks too. Frank Harris and Chandler Morris both ran the ball effectively, not a lot, but sometimes the UTSA quarterback and the TCU quarterback could get outside and run. 9 for 69 for um, Morris, 7 for I don't have enough 41 yards for Harris. So by design, those are sack adjusted. So you take away the 1 sack for UTSA, the 3 sacks for TCU. Those are the numbers for the quarterbacks in the run game there. Not all called, some by design, some by need, but that's an extra running back that West Virginia has. Good news for the offense here. I think Garrett Green, healthy, practicing. The rest was good for him. He looked okay on a compromised ankle against TCU a little over a week ago. Figure he's healthier now. He can actually be sharp. He can plant with authority when he runs. And that is a second running back there that this defense is going to have to account for. And not at all times have the Cougars been able to do that. And that just makes you wonder, can they do something with the quarterback in the backfield to open up the passing game? Because figure that Houston is going to do like a lot of teams do. They're going to probably be a little bit more aggressive or closer to West Virginia's receivers. I think when I look at stuff, though, they're in zone 75, 80% of the time, even though they have some big corners and some veteran corners who have played a lot of football, maybe in different schools. They just haven't had any success stopping the pass, though.
No, and I'm looking at this is what you remember how we kept talking about contested targets and contested catches for last year, and it was like, hey, that's great, but not great because that means you're not getting open. Well, Houston's secondary in their games against FBS opponents, they are contesting targets only 19% of the time. That means 4 out of every 5 pass attempts for opposing quarterbacks, the receiver is open. 4 out of 5 times the receiver is open, not contested. And what have we been talking about being a problem for West Virginia's wide receivers? They can't get open. They're having a hard time getting open. Having a hard time getting separation. Like you noted, they're running a lot of zone. So that means you're gonna have to kind of sit in those zones. You're not gonna have the tight man coverage that West Virginia faced, like against TCU, where the receivers just could not get away from defensive backs. But this is an opportunity for these receivers to make the most of these situations where they are open. And again, Garrett Green has to hit them too, because while West Virginia didn't get a lot of separation, even when they did against TCU, Green didn't hit a couple of those throws. The Rodney Gallagher play comes to mind where he got separation, was wide open in the end zone, and I think I received a message from a certain someone that said, "Holy cow, Garrett Green threw that one to Dallas." Um, that's not good. You got to capitalize on those kind of situations, and Houston's going to give WVU that opportunity in the secondary.
Their cornerbacks are big. That's the one thing I've noticed too. Just watching some stuff, flipping through some highlights of them, and then different than what I saw earlier. Like I watched them play Rice. That was the JT Daniels game. All of a sudden, Rice is out having a huge game. We're in a weather delay in the Mountaineer Field press box, so that's an interesting one. Did not see some of the same players, and their corners now are 6'2" and 6'3". And the new one to watch, probably Moses Alexander, wasn't playing early on. He's played in 3 games now. He started the last 2. He's 6'3", 195, kind of a sneaky, talented junior college kid. Other side is Isaiah Hamilton, 6'1", 175. They have a pretty good nickelback named Malik Fleming, who was like an all-conference player at East Carolina. He's just 5'8", 179, though. Trouble is that, like, when things do get in between the corners and maybe beyond that nickel, their safeties haven't been great in coverage this year, and they just give up plays and chunks, and quarterbacks have gotten hot and kind of had some success in stretches against them. Can they get open, though? I just wonder if it's one of those games where Green gets rid of the ball quick, so he can't get sacked. He can't get pressure by that front. Or maybe he runs early. I don't know. But find the space sooner rather than later and make something happen.
Like that you brought up Fleming because he is such an all or nothing guy for them. Um, Looking at the numbers here from PFF, he has allowed 14 of 19 completions for 205 yards, which is horrendous. Except, so there's 5 incompletions there. 3 of those 5 incompletions have been interceptions, and the other 2 were pass breakups. Like he literally got his hand on it. So he is an all or nothing guy. Like he'll create some havoc, but if you can get past him, if you can make that one play, beat him for that ball, you can make it happen. And I'm with you. Outside of those corners, it's attacking those linebackers. They run like a 4-2-5 kind of looking thing with two true linebackers. At least that's how they're listed as lined up. That's how their depth chart read. Is it depth depth chart? Am I pronouncing that right, Mike?
I'm
Do
not
we know what
familiar
that
with what
is?
that is.
Okay. I think it's called a depth chart. And they line it up as a 4-2-5. And those linebackers and that nickelback, 34 of 43 for 406 yards when they're in coverage. That's opposing quarterbacks at the FBS level. So you
Uh,
could, or at all levels, actually. I don't even think that that's excluding Sam Houston State. Like they can get picked apart across the middle there.
mhm. They do have Antonio Brooks back. He played the first game, missed the next couple. He played the last game. Um, but still they gave up. He wasn't the fix because they definitely got. It wasn't a great Baron Morton game, but he definitely had some moments where he looked good. And again, you can kind of pick your spots against them. I guess the strength of their defense, though, Chris, is that front. They have some troublemakers when you look at whether it's transfers or guys they developed through the years, but they have some players who can probably start rubbing their hands together when you think about the offensive line that West Virginia may put out there, which could be Nick Malone, Jaquay Hubbard, and then Zach Frazier. I guess you probably have Brandon Yates still at right guard, and then Doug Nestor at right tackle. But the latest on Wyatt Milam in red, wearing like protective spectacles, I guess. I don't know if it's sunglasses or a shield or whatever, but Wednesday, big practice day. I guess maybe it's a walkthrough. Can he go? But I also don't think that the fact he's wearing a red jersey and he's not participating in practice means a whole lot. I don't think he's one of those guys that has to practice to play. I think he's good enough to handle that, and he understands left tackle. They're not putting in exotic left tackle schemes, and he's got to be great for it. And he can certainly get mental reps, but if he can't play, you're a little bit thinner there, and you're using your two depth pieces in the starting lineup, which is a concern against anybody, but probably especially against a formidable, I would say, defensive front.
Yeah, I'm very curious what Houston does with Nelson Caesar. He is by far, I think, one of the best pass rushers in the entire Big 12. He led Houston with 48 pressures last year. He leads the team with 16 pressures so far this year. I think he's got 5 sacks already too. Um, Early on, first 3 weeks, I think it was. They kind of moved him back and forth where he lined up, left side, right side, left side, right side. I'm assuming that's a strong side, weak side sort of lineup, and he was flip-flopping depending on how the offense was lining up. And it seems like, at least according to the PFFs and where he was lined up at for each snap, he became more of a left side only, which would be the right tackle spot, lining up over across from Doug Nestor. In the last 2 games, 61 of his 79 snaps have been at that left edge, that left outside linebacker spot going up against the right tackle. Um, will that remain the same? Knowing that if Rematch is out, we know Rematch is out, but if Milam might also be out, maybe you look at that left side and think, oh, it's a little bit weaker. Maybe you flip Caesar and put him up against that side of the line and try to get to Garrett Green's blind side in that situation. I'm curious what Houston will change or if they will change with that because he is such a good player and lining him up against Nestor. Nestor's a good player. There's some good on good, and maybe it's just running into a wall for Caesar, or maybe he takes advantage of West Virginia's best outside lineman, and they can have somebody else kind of try to pick on Malone. Although to his credit, I'd love to poll WVU fans and ask them how many of them knew that Nick Malone played almost the entire second half against TCU because I don't think many people noticed. It certainly wasn't being discussed, and he was out there and he was good. So be interesting to see.
Yeah, when I say Wednesday big practice day, that's on a regular week. Obviously not this week, but I think if we were to find out that on the walkthrough before they fly to Houston that he's in red, Wyatt Milam, do not be alarmed by that. I just think that he can play without practicing. If not, yeah, they're gonna have to run Malone out there. They're gonna have to hope that he and Hubbard stay upright and don't get rolled up or targeting calls against them or anything like that, because then you're into your eighth offensive lineman for a team that really has only played 6 or 7 so far. I don't know who would be in next. And then, if something were to happen to Malone, if he's ineffective, if he's hurt, if he's ejected for targeting, I think you probably slide Nestor over to left tackle and then try to put somebody in a right tackle, which could be Hubbard. It could be Yates. I don't know. A whole lot of crazy things happening. And I feel like we didn't give that a lot of attention during the Q&As we had with the offensive coordinator, the head coach this week. But again, this is a team that plays maybe six offensive linemen in the game. They're going to be starting perhaps number 7. They're definitely going to start number 6. That's going to be something to watch there too, because I do think this is a good defensive line that can, if they're going to have a formula, it's going to be, let's stop this run. Let's hope we can hold up against a mediocre, let's say, passing offense for West Virginia and get after the quarterback and make him make mistakes. It's a lot easier when you have a good defensive line and you're going against a compromised offensive line. I'm not saying that West Virginia is inferior, that it's the lesser of the 2 units up front. I think those 5 are probably still pretty good, certainly experienced enough in the program, if not in the field. And even I would say that at this point, Hubbard should probably be experienced on the field. And Malone's just a guy who's been around. I think they trust, and he has played and been uneventful, save one flinch on a field goal block or field goal protection. I wouldn't hold that against him as your left tackle of the present. So certainly something there to watch. Can it work? We'll see. And then just finally, Chris, any intangibles here when it comes to, I don't know, downs, distances, any other rankings? Because one definitely jumps out to me that I think is important.
Oh boy. I hope we don't have the same one because I put in some time on this one. Put in
Ooh,
some time.
okay, you go first, and I don't want to steal your thunder that you've worked so hard to capture.
Can you tell me which team ranks dead last, 133rd out of 133 teams in third down conversions of 7 yards or longer this season?
Ah,
Are you kidding me?
that was part of my explanation for why third downs are just critical here. Because again, West Virginia's not going to hit you with like a bevy of 9 and 12-yard plays. They're going to get to third down a bunch.
Yep.
What third
West
downs are
Virginia
really going to
went two
matter?
for 2 of 21 on third downs of 7 yards or longer, which ranks dead last. The two, not the rate. I'm sure the rate is probably last or close to last, but the total of 2 is the lowest in the entire country, 133 out of 133, which again, that's tough. It's hard to overcome. It makes sense with the offense. I mean, I was, as I was going through it and trying to filter out these teams, going through piece by piece, it came down to the final 3 teams of being the lowest were WVU, Navy, and I think it was Air Force or Army. It was tough. And the good news, the little bit of good news here, Houston ranks 115th out of 132 teams in tackles for loss. So they're not going to be getting a lot of sacks. They rank 105th in sacks, 133 teams, excuse me. So they're not getting a bunch of sacks. They're not really getting into the backfield and getting tackles for loss that could really push WVU into those third and long situations either.
Yeah, in wins, Houston's defense, 7 conversions, 26 third downs, right? That's pretty good. They're getting off the field 19 times out of those 26. In their losses, here are the numbers. Rice was 8 conversions, 14 attempts. TCU, 6 for 15, but also 3 for 3 on fourth down. And then Texas Tech was 6 for 11. And if you look at those breakdowns there, they're manageable fourth downs or third downs. They're not third and 12s they're giving away, but and teams have been able to let's see, opposition is 7 for 8 on fourth down too. So they're giving up plays that it's close on third, it's close on fourth. It's not a tall task to convert third down on them. And if it is, they either get closer or it's not a tall task on third down and they go again on fourth down. And they've been really, really successful. One of the least successful third and fourth down defenses being Houston's defense. And then can West Virginia, again, doesn't have to be CFL football here. You can play 3 and 4 downs and worry about your fourth down play on fourth down as opposed to second down. You can actually use your downs to get in the situation you want to, and that'll be tricky. So certainly something to watch right there. And I can't imagine all the toggling and addition you had to do because I know the site you went to try to find that out, and that would have been quite time consuming, I think. So good for you.
Yeah. Bouncing back and forth between all the running, passing, different situations,
Not easy.
weeding them out. Yeah.
Turnovers. You make anything out of Houston's turnover? Luck, prowess, numbers.
Yeah, I mean, turnovers are a big thing for Houston. What I've noticed is they're always forcing turnovers on defense. I believe it was they have 5 forced turnovers in their wins, 4 forced turnovers in their losses. So the rate's a little better than in their wins than it is in their losses. But more importantly, they're not turning the ball over on offense to give the ball back to the other team. I think they have 0 turnovers on offense in their wins and 3 in their losses. So more so that things change on offense than they do in Houston's defense.
All right, well, let's turn it over here to the other side here, the other matchup, which is going to be flipping the script. Obviously, it'll be the Houston offense, the West Virginia defense. We'll start with some personnel things here. We mentioned the offensive line uncertainty. We know for sure no Trey Lathan. He will be replaced by Lee Koba and ostensibly by Ben Cutter. Ben Cutter, now you're Mike. Koba, you're Will. Let's start there. That is and is not the answer. We thought Cutter would be the replacement. We did not know that he would be in the middle and he would bump Koba outside to Will, and that's still an inside position, I guess. But they've messed with this before. They were playing Lathan quite a bit at Mike. And then as I go back and watch, when they brought Cutter in to replace Lathan, he pretty much played Mike for the push of that game. And this is the plan they're going to go with moving forward.
Yeah, I kind of like it. This is something, the Koba and Will thing is something you and I talked about on this podcast last year, before last year, when we were discussing how he's going to fit in this role. And we're like, man, this is a big, strong, fast guy. How great would it be to have him at will rushing the bandit? What about rushing the quarterback? What about bandit? You could even get after the quarterback with that. And I think all that still holds true. And you look back to the TCU game where, yeah, like you said, with Lathan out and Cutter was already subbing in for Lathan before the injury in on some series. And when he did, yeah, went to Mike, pushed Koba over to more of a will. And in that game, Koba had 5 pressures on the quarterback. They used him like a pass rusher. He really got after the quarterback at times and was doing different things and moving downhill, which I think is best for him, given his skill set. So I'm a big fan of this move.
Yeah, he's a weapon. And like they mentioned before, that he could get through the Penn State offensive line. I don't think that was necessarily a one night only thing. I think they're like, wait a minute, this guy can do that. Why can't we find ways that he can punch through other offensive lines? And it's a lot different when you put that wrecking ball in the middle of the field and you know where he's going to be. And that weak side switches every time. It could be left side one time, it could be the right side one time. You can move him around, and you don't have to put him over just the tackle or just the tight end. You can put him over a guard. You can have him twist and stunt. There's a lot of ways for him to be effective. A little bit more murky, maybe not, is safety. Aubrey Burks, like Milam practicing in red or being in red at practice, that's a guy who's going to have to practice to play just because of, and I'm using Neil Brown's word here, the trauma involved with that injury. Significant, obviously. It would appear to me he's not on track to play well, if at all, here if he's in red. At latest report for me, that would have been yesterday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon. If he's not practicing on Tuesday, the game is Thursday. He's going to have to hurry up and get there. I'm not sure that he will. And then it's just a lot of questions. But this is concerning because, Chris, the best group of receivers they've seen so far belong to Houston, correct?
Yeah, it looks like it. Like they are just like the safety, the nickelback we were talking about, Fleming. They are kind of all or nothing with their stuff. They are a couple of those guys are among the league leaders in drop rate for the Big 12, Stephon Johnson and Matthew Golden. But this offense is also among one of the best in the country. I believe they ranked number 26 in the nation in passing offense, and they are making some plays. They are making a lot of contested catches. They were at last check. I made this list. Yeah, I guess so. I guess their numbers still hold true, but they led the Big 12 before the open week in contested catches by receivers. So they are kind of a hit or miss, but all or nothing kind of team with that wide receiver group, and it's resulted in some big pass plays.
Patrick Paul, probably as good as it gets for an offensive lineman, I would say, on the schedule so far. But for the beginning of the year to the end of the year, he's going to stand up probably against anybody. That's your left tackle for them. And then just kind of, they have guys that can play and get you snaps there, but anchor on the left side, they do some action with their running on the left. Obviously, he's very good, but that Paul matchup against, it could be Martin, it could be Tomiwa Ajayi, but West Virginia's been good about getting pressure over the edges. That seems like one to watch right there.
Yeah, where you're going to get the pressure is I don't know if it's going to come on that left side, which would be the
Nope.
right side for the defense, because like I said, Paul, 94.8 pass blocking rating, PFF. That's swell. Left guard Tyler Johnson, 79.5. So that's very good. So if you're trying to get penetration on that side of the line, good luck. Good luck to you. You're gonna have to get creative with that, I think. Things get a little more leaky on the right tackle spot, on the right edge, which would be left edge for WVU's defense. Uh Ruben Unije, I believe is how you pronounce it. 57.8 pass blocking grade. again, but the weakest of the pass blockers on the team. So might be a spot you see West Virginia trying to bring pressure.
Donovan Smith has never thrown an incomplete pass against West Virginia. Discuss.
Was it 2 years ago? I remember it. I remember it because you were very pro Donovan Smith, and you weren't. You said, "Watch out! They're gonna bring the. They've got this big, tall, strong, fast backup quarterback. They might bring him in for some trick plays." And I think that was the year that they did. They brought him in. It was like, what was he like 3 for 3, 4 for 4,
Yep.
ran a couple times.
What do you
He's a
what do you read of
specimen,
him?
man. He's got it.
What do you make of him? Because he does kind of profile as like one of those quarterbacks who can give you trouble because he can run. I'm not sure he's straight air raid, but he's a dual threat. And again, if he gets moving, he's big. He's tough to bring down. And he's gone from I don't want to say gadget quarterback, but certainly a guy that can come in and give you something different. Now he's got the whole show to himself, and it's been hit or miss this year for him too. Rushing, I think he's like 55 carries, 160 yards, something like that. 55, 153, 3 touchdowns. Passing though a little bit different. 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, 7 yards, an attempt, 65% completion. And he's had some big games. He's been no worse than 225 every game, topped out at 335, 4 touchdowns against Texas Tech. I think if you watch that game, I'm not saying they could have won. They gave up 14 points on special teams. They lose by 21, but their offense played better that game than it had in the past, and he had one of his best days.
Yeah, I'm watching this one closely because you have to wonder if he might have kind of found his rhythm or gotten on the right track. You look at those first 3 games, UTSA, Rice, and TCU, and he was completing only like 56% of his passes, had 4 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, averaging about 230, 240 yards per game. And then he gets the last 2 games. Now he's completing 75% of his passes, and he's got 5 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, and it's over 300 yards per game in those two. And I get that you're going to say, hey, it's Sam Houston State. He was better against Texas Tech than he was against Sam Houston State. So it's not the Sam Houston State game that's lifting those stats. It's the Texas Tech game on the road in Lubbock that are lifting the stats in this conversation. So he's had 2 very good performances back to back, and it does make me wonder if, hey, has he found it? Could this be one of those situations where maybe things are starting to click for him and he has another big game this Thursday night?
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that while Sam Brown is excellent this year, 34 catches, 518 yards, just 1 touchdown last game where he had 10 catches for a touchdown against Texas Tech. They got Matthew Golden going against Sam Houston State, had 9 catches, had his most yardage. And then that's like an NFL guy. That's a guy that I think is a really good player and he's going to be in the pros. Maybe Brown will too. But Golden, a top recruit for them, and just hadn't had a terrific season like they thought maybe. And then, all right, 9 catches in the fourth game. If you're going to be good, 2 catches last week, not a lot of yardage, really got kind of quieted by Texas Tech, which we know not synonymous with great defense. Can they find their way against West Virginia secondary? We'll see here. And the running game, Chris, familiar name, Tony Mathis, but not his show here. If he was looking for more playing time, maybe he's getting it, but change of scenery hasn't done a lot to change his output so far.
No, from my conversation with the Houston guys, it sounds like, the job is now Parker Jenkins, freshman, right, from out there in Houston. And they're kind of shifting things around. Jenkins took over that starting role in the week 3 with Sam Houston State, 20 carries in that one, 13 carries last week against Texas Tech. And yeah, he kind of Tony, he left the situation in WVU because there were 4 running backs and a fifth one coming in, and now he's involved in a situation where he's the second or third running back with a quarterback who runs it just as much, if not more, than some of the running backs. So it's a crowded backfield back there for all sorts of runners.
Any other aspects here before we get into our talking points that we'll be sure to be talking about after the game?
Get pressure on Smith. I mean, feel like we say that a lot, and some of the stats for some of the quarterbacks don't quite, indicate that you have to get pressure. But Smith, when he's kept clean, 71% completion, 7 TDs, 1 interception, 85.7 PFF grade. When he's under pressure, 39.5% completion percentage, 2 TDs, 2 INTs, and a 40.5 PFF grade. Pressure, pressure, pressure.
And they're not going to bail on him either. If he has a bad game, if he's, got his head down because of turnovers or he can't run or can't move the ball, he's their QB 1, 2, and 3. They just don't have a lot of depth behind him and no one that they trust right now. Um, Not a far fall from Clayton Tune, but like Tune was just a totally different guy with the way they ran the offense and moved the ball, in particular how they threw it to. And maybe that's some growing pains right now, but we'll see. Thursday, 7 p.m. That gets us up in the press box post game, Chris. 11, maybe. We'll see. Maybe even sooner because we don't actually have to go down to the news conference at Houston Stadium. When you and I get together, win or lose, who or what are we talking about that explains the outcome between the Mountaineers and the Cougars?
This is the game where I think it feels very strong. This is first take, hot take kind of thing. This is the game I think where you decide if Garrett Green's your quarterback of the future, not just for the rest of the season. I mean, I feel like obviously you're going with him most of the rest of the season, pretty much no matter what, but your choice for beyond because this is going to be the easiest pass defense you are going to face all season long. These receivers should be open. Garrett Green should be able to find them and connect on those passes. And I think whether he can or cannot is what we're going to be talking about late Thursday night.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to get away from this general point, though, about sustainability. Can they do it on offense the way they're doing it? No. Can they do it on defense the way they're going to have to do it? Probably also no. But for one night, they're going to have to be good enough on defense because the answers aren't going to arrive. So they're going to have to make it work with who and what they have against an offense that is not prolific. And then offensively, yeah, man, if they do believe they've been handcuffed and that they just needed time to get on track, well, they've had the time and the handcuffs should be gone by now. Like any magician can find their way out of this. They should have figured it out by now. And if it isn't solved or if it isn't more toward the resolution by Saturday night, you have some issues. And like if they do start to leak on defense there, you really have to wonder about what's going on forward. So we'll definitely have more reason to speculate, I think, at the end of this one. Coming up, condensed week, all of our pregame features, the matchup by Chris, the fresh set by me, some videos previewing the game, plenty of talk, plenty of video, plenty of anticipation for West Virginia at Houston, a reunion with Dana Holgerson and I don't know, like 30 of the former Mountaineers there. Should be a fun one. Until then, I am Mike Casazza.
I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.